the excitement surrounding the upcoming 7th installment in what I would say is the most dependable franchise in Hollywood today is building constantly. And that movie is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. After the initial teaser trailer dropped nearly a year ago, we've seen Tom Cruise hang onto a diving plane while introducing Top Gun Maverick, also known as one of the most popular movies of all time, wish us all a Happy New Year while oh so casually falling through the air, and release a behind-the-scenes look at yet another extremely impressive, mind-blowing stunt. Also, more recently, there was apparently a 20-minute sequence from the movie shown at CinemaCon, and another trailer is very likely coming up on the horizon. So with all the hype and buzz already surrounding this film, why did I decide to take to YouTube to join the many other people saying how excited they are about this movie? Because at least in the world I live in, I am hard-pressed to find very many other people that share my enthusiasm for Tom Cruise and his movies. That might be an understatement. I have spoken to so many people in my own life that just aren't crazy about him and avoid his films because of that. And I am completely the opposite. I would go so far as to say he is one of the most talented filmmakers and actors working today. And obviously, I'm not the only one that thinks so. He keeps making movies, and if Top Gun Maverick proved anything, it's that a Tom Cruise sequel can still make money. And that is definitely an understatement. So what I want to do in this video is try to articulate why I am such a huge fan of his. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to be diving into his personal life or the myriad of rumors and gossip that surround it. The reason for this is because I don't care about that. If I was going to base the movies I watch and enjoy on the private lives of the people starring in and making them, I wouldn't watch very many movies. And quite often, the more I end up learning about any celebrity, it makes me wish I hadn't. So with that out of the way, I'm going to break down 3 elements that I think are crucial to the success he's enjoyed, particularly in the wake of Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. His dedication to crafting entertaining movies is what I love the most. He very obviously cares about building an experience that audiences want to have, that they want to share with others and tell people about. And over the last few years, he has proven to be quite the master at that. Specifically, his last 2 movies, Mission Impossible: Fallout and Top Gun Maverick. Each of these movies are basically masterpieces of action movie filmmaking, and yet don't ignore the emotion and character building that are what ultimately elevate a film from just dumb action to something that draws the audience in and keeps them hooked right to the very end. And please, Paramount, don't force them to shorten Mission Impossible 7 any more than necessary. The way that he, his co-stars, his directors, producing partners, etc. speak about the making of these movies does have the effect of making it sound like it's a one-man show, that Tom Cruise is single-handedly making these movies. While that's definitely not the case, it can't be denied that without Tom Cruise pushing to get them made, productions of this magnitude would not come to fruition. So many movies have tried to emulate the Mission Impossible style, but come off looking like cheap knockoffs, because they are. Protecting your movie star and their megawatt smile by suspending them in a room of giant blue screens is fine, but it's not going to convince the audience. Not really. There's a reason that other studios don't put out 10-minute behind-the-scenes featurettes in the lead-up to their film's release, because what we would see wouldn't be that interesting. A huge factor in what gives his movies the feel they have is the fact that they are shot in real locations. That, and the style with which they're made, brings so much atmosphere, tactile quality to the stunning vistas, landscapes, and skylines that we are treated to, and a visceral, uncompromising weight to the action scenes. Nowhere is this more present than in the Mission Impossible franchise. Which brings me to the stunts. That is, unfortunately, the only thing that most people discuss when a new Tom Cruise movie is coming out. I get it. It's exciting. Seeing one of the most recognizable people on the planet risk his life for the sake of a movie is thrilling. There's no doubt about that. But these movies are so much more than that. As Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, his very frequent collaborator, who I'll be talking about more yet, always say, the action must come from the story and must build our understanding and knowledge of the characters. So while it's very true that these stunts and action set pieces are what sell the movie, these movies would fail if they didn't have the right cast, the right script, and the right score to make them work as part of a larger whole. And outside of the movies they feature in, these incredible feats of daring do are another example of Tom Cruise's unwavering commitment to making movies that will please and entertain the masses. He says it all the time, which I'll mention again in the next point, but he makes these movies for audiences. I'm sure that mastering these skills and getting to display them in a massively budgeted action film doesn't hurt the old ego either, but at the end of the day, if people aren't enjoying them, they don't amount to very much. The next element that I think has helped him immeasurably over the years is his persona. There was a time when Tom Cruise would share his own personal opinions about some controversial topics, and he soon learned that the adoring public could very quickly become the villagers from the end of Frankenstein. So these days, he's the stunt guy, and he's the I love movies guy, and I think that is exactly all he needs to be. Sure, some people complain that the interviews he gives might not have a lot of substance. When he makes his somewhat rare appearances on talk shows, he'll talk about the movie he's there to promote, give some funny story about the making of, and maybe relate some experiences from movies long past, usually about working on Taps back in 1981, or working under legendary directors like Tony Scott or someone like that. The in-between period where more of these controversies and headline-grabbing events have popped up is kept strictly off limits. His biggest public brouhaha of the last few years was his recorded corrective measures directed at some non-COVID restriction-following crew members whilst making Mission Impossible 7. In normal Tom Cruise fashion, he never addressed the incident himself. The rest of the world talked it to death. Other celebrities gave their thoughts on it, but he glided past it with ease. And that's because it wasn't that big of a deal. While I didn't agree with his use of profanity, in summation, the overall effect of this was that he's the I love movies guy, and was wanting to make his movie with as little trouble as possible, so that audiences could enjoy it. He doesn't try to tell us what our thoughts or politics should be, unlike most other celebrities out there, and that's perfect as well. Kurt Russell, who is another actor I appreciate so much, said this a few years ago. I've always been someone who felt we are court jesters. That's what we do. As far as I'm concerned, you should step away from saying anything so that you can still be seen by the audience as any character. And I have a feeling that the Tom Cruise we see today would agree with that. Maybe not the court jester label. I suspect Tom Cruise takes his job a little more seriously than that, but the effect is the same. Top Gun Maverick became the entertainment powerhouse that it did, mostly because it's just a great old-fashioned action movie, but also because anybody could watch it, and you didn't have to worry about some movie studio shoving its politics down your throat. The military-centric plot might lean more right-wing if you want to see it through that lens, but it also gives you a multicultural group of characters without making it seem like every person is there because of how they look. They were cast because of their ability to play the character, and they were a fantastic group of characters. The veteran movie star Tom Cruise that is working these days knows he's an entertainer, first and foremost, and he's not going to let anything stand in the way of that. And the third factor in Tom Cruise's continued standing as a popular leading man is Christopher McQuarrie. If you look at the list of movies that Tom Cruise has made since just 2011, there is one connecting factor that all his best ones share, and that is Chris McQuarrie. I realize I'm not personal friends with him, so I feel a little strange calling him Chris when he's always billed in credits as Christopher. It's just quicker to say. I will not get so familiar as to call him McHugh, though. Their first collaboration was when he wrote Valkyrie, which came out in 2008. He did uncredited work on the Ghost Protocol script, he's one of the writers of Edge of Tomorrow and Top Gun Maverick, and is the writer and director of Jack Reacher, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, and Mission Impossible Fallout. Jack Reacher is amazing, and as a fan of the Lee Child novels, I think it's the perfect version of filtering that character through Tom Cruise and bringing that to the screen. It's a beautifully made, tense, slow enough to bring out that slow burn of an investigation that you want to see, while still having some smaller scale action that is excellent and brutal, and larger scale action like the car chase that I think is nearly perfect. And it's got Robert Duvall. I love Robert Duvall. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is probably my favorite Mission Impossible movie so far. Nothing whatsoever against Fallout, but Rogue Nation is this big, glossy, somewhat retro-feeling movie that pays tribute to the original series in so many ways. The original series is my favorite TV show ever, by the way. The Joe Kramer score is my absolute favorite from the series. It brought Rebecca Ferguson into the realm of one of my favorite younger actors, and goes from the biggest stunt of the series up to that point to the smallest scale and completely satisfying finale you could hope for. And Mission Impossible Fallout is so close to edging out Rogue Nation as my favorite. It's an action-packed, gritty film with some of the best staged and best shot action scenes in history. The bathroom fight. Need I say more? I will anyway. The halo jump, the motorcycle chase through Paris, the helicopter sequence. The movie is cinematic brilliance. But again, it's not just the action. It also has the emotional heft to tie up the loose thread named Julia that had been dangling since Mission Impossible 3. It strains and nearly breaks the relationship between Ethan Hunt and Ilsa Faust, and gives Ving Rhames his best material in the series. And that Lorne Balfe score, Fallout is wonderful. Each of these movies deserves their own video dedicated to them, and maybe I will at some point. But for now, I extol their virtues to simply demonstrate the power of combining the talents of Tom Cruise with one Chris McQuarrie. Chris McQuarrie began his movie career as a writer, and as someone who dabbles in some writing himself, I love examining his writing style. His dialogue is excellent, and while I don't imagine myself to have nearly the skill he has, he so often includes lines that I can see myself writing or trying to write. Again, any comparison I make is only to say how much I appreciate the way he writes. And on top of that, he has such a depth of understanding about how movies work and why they work. I have listened to hours upon hours of podcast interviews where he will explain in so much nitty-gritty detail how certain scenes came to be, how they changed, how an earlier version would have gone and why it was discarded. All of that is fascinating to me. So, far from a powerful movie star working with the same director continually and pushing him around, he and Tom Cruise appear to be, and according to them they are, fantastic co-workers. They have their disagreements, each of them has won and lost many arguments to the other, but their partnership has continued to result in movies that don't get bogged down in messaging or lecturing the audience. Instead, their focus is to turn out a story that the audience will find compelling, filmed in a way that will grip anyone watching and have them walk away from it with a feeling that they had a good time, even if they're totally out of breath and their fingers hurt from gripping their chair. Which brings me back to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. This movie looks stunning. The first teaser is the most epic 2 minutes and 16 seconds you will ever see. Chris McQuarrie seems to be committing once again to what he set out to do with Fallout. While he was the first returning director to the Mission Impossible series, he wanted it to have the look and feel of being a different director's work. And it certainly did. But they do somewhat sound the same. Again, I love his writing. And Dead Reckoning Part 1 also has its own unique look. The camera is kept close to the ground during chases and fight sequences. The sets look massive. The locations span the globe, which is not a surprise, and continue to bring us to new locales not featured in this series before. Those desert sequences, the submarine, that train going off the cliff. The return of Kittredge is, of course, very exciting, with another tense standoff across a table being the only dialogue in the trailer. Returning characters abound, and we also get some new ones. And the title itself. When it was announced, the general reactions were kind of a shrug. Dead Reckoning. It sounds like a term we've all heard many times. There have been plenty of sequels and TV episodes called The Reckoning, Dead Reckoning, etc. But Christopher McQuarrie explained the meaning of the title a little while back in an interview with Empire magazine, stating, "Dead Reckoning is a navigational term. It means you're picking a course based solely on your last known position, and that becomes quite the metaphor not only for Ethan, but for several characters. When a title has that kind of mysterious, perhaps ominous meaning, I'm not about to complain. For me, this is my most anticipated movie of the year. If you've watched my video discussing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, you'll know that one is also very close to the top of the list. Mission Impossible resides at the very top, though, because there is such a minuscule chance that Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie are going to disappoint. They have proven time and again that they know what they are doing, especially with this series. So if you're one of those people who has been hesitant regarding Tom Cruise, try and put your preconceptions and memories of past headlines out of your mind. He is one of the few filmmakers out there that is just working to entertain you, and he's making movies that a family can enjoy together, which is so important in the time we're living in. Whether he's an international super spy or the greatest fighter pilot of all time, he's almost always playing the antidote to all those superheroes that keep overcrowding the movie scene these days. If you've never seen the Mission Impossible series, or if you watched a couple and then stopped, I'd highly recommend going back and watching them. Keep in mind, when you hit Ghost Protocol, get ready. Things are about to get really, really good. I, for one, am extremely excited to join the IMF for another deadly mission. And the main character is also named Ethan. That fact alone is enough to get me excited for any movie. Whether it's Ethan Edwards or Ethan Hunt, I'm in. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, I hope you consider checking out some more videos from Hildebrand Productions. Thanks again, and adios for now.